Okay, let's call the meeting, the Budget Advisory Committee, Thursday, August 18th, 2022 at 2 p.m. Do we have a quorum?
We do.
Okay, roll call.
Mr. McCloy?
Here.
Mr. Bergman?
Here.
Ms. Hull is absent. Ms. Engel?
Here.
Ms. Major?
Here.
And Ms. Howard?
Here.
Okay. All right. So going into the agenda, the first item is review, discussion, salary, pay plan, classification, and pay increases for fiscal year 2023. Who's going to address this?
I am.
To you, sir.
So this is something, since this is going to be brought to the budget session tonight, the board work session. A lot of times it doesn't hit. Usually this comes up at usually the last meeting of August on a regular session, where we talk about these things. Because of the timing of everything, we're able to bring it early to them tonight. Obviously, tonight's meeting was supposed to be the 11th, but because two of them were going to the Florida League of Cities conference, we had to postpone it. So whatever happens tonight at the meeting, we have to make a quick turnaround tomorrow morning, because by noon we have to get the agenda out for Tuesday night meeting where they'll review and approve these. These have to be approved by resolution, so these aren't just included into the budget. So basically, we want to give you an idea, since since the meeting did fall right before we were presenting it to the board. And we usually don't cover a lot of these in budget advisory in past years, but while we're here, we thought we'd do a fast overview.
And the fact that we made a
Yeah.
recommendation here.
Yes.
Just want to make sure that it's consistent with what you're saying.
Well, in fact, again, the first two things we always deal with is the ranges and the salaries, and 'cause I think we talked about early, a little larger movement in the ranges because of what's happening all over. So we're asking for a 5% at the bottom and at the top of the ranges. When we went to the board in the first budget workshop with the 5% raise that we had put in, there was still a concern of the board about the lower paid employees and trying to get them up a little more and a little bit more money. So as a result of the discussion with the board, which we'll discuss tonight, some wanted more, and I don't know, nobody said less, but some wanted more. But the reasonable accommodation of the money that we have within the budget to not add more to what we have for the committee to have discretion on, we came up with a formula, as you see in there, the $14 an hour to $16.75, 7%. So that was an extra 2%, and that affected the 48 of the lowest paid employees. 48 of those employees are getting an extra 2%. Obviously, that creates compression. So to avoid compression, those employees that made $16.75 to $21, they were given an extra 1% for 6%. And somehow that fell pretty good in the gap. And how we do these is not just you pick a number, you look for there's a gap. You have a sheet with everybody's salary.
Yep.
And you look for gaps. And there was a large gap, and it just happened to be between when you hit the 2160, there was a big gap between the next person on the salary. So that was the place to stop. I mean, where we'd have stopped if the gap would have been at $20.89, but to avoid compression, that's where the natural stop. So these are all natural stopping points. So you don't have somebody who gets the 2 jump over somebody who started ahead but then falls behind. So it kind of fell out pretty good. And that affected 90 employees. So 48 employees got 2% extra, the lowest ones got 2% extra. 90 employees got 1% extra, and then 117 employees stayed with the 5% that we talked about normally. So
And then you have the contract people, they're just
Right.
according to the contract.
Well, we're gonna get to them a little bit later.
Ah, thank you.
We're gonna get to them a little bit later. So,
Those are just the start out salaries, the hourly two lowest salaries that you just addressed. Being paid by hourly,
right,
the two lowest ones. The lowest being 7% increase you're recommending.
right,
The next one, 6%.
right.
After that, we're to 5%.
Then it's the 5%. Original plan was 5% across the board.
I understand. So
Yeah.
there's still going to be a gap between the 7% and the 6%?
Yes, nobody overlaps anybody. It falls naturally into that spot.
What does that bring the lowest hourly amount up to after the increase?
Just pennies, and we may do something about that. Just pennies, like 14.99, 94, something. Just we're at the point now where everybody's within a nickel of $15 an hour, which was a goal we had set, I think, to get 2023, 24, or 24, 25. We'd hope to get there. We're gonna get there now. So really, starting pay is gonna end up being $15 an hour now, like the national trend and stuff. So we're able to do that now. And we've been given these graduated raises probably the last 3, 4, 5 years to get to that goal, because we had people in the $10 an hour, $11 an hour. Gradually, we've been given advanced raises to those lower salaries to move to a point to get somewhere between 23 and 24, everybody to the $15 an hour mark. And, we're able to do that now. So
That's great
it's good.
to start.
Question, it's not exactly on this subject, but related. Last meeting, we showed a chart that, it had a lot of positions that haven't been filled. I think I counted 27.
You got a new
28.
one.
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah, it's down to 24. I think it was down to 22, then went to 24. But off the presses, as of today, I think it's fluctuated from the last time we went. It got down to 22 and back up to 24.
Okay.
Do we have the total dollar spend difference in the original 5% across the board versus now? Like, what does that mean to the bottom line in dollars?
Yes, we do. For the total for the general fund, the general fund is 35 for both the 2 and the 1. Everything extra besides the 5 is 35,799 for the general fund, 18,500 for the water and sewer fund, and then little ones like CRA $859, Marina $614. The total. Again, that we're able to incorporate, and a lot of the incorporating using the money we use from these positions that were open, that Ron was able to fund, so it came out even in the budget, was $62,511 from all funds together. That's what it ended up being.
That's what it's costing to up the, I got you.
Yes.
I have to admit, I always hated hearing that, when we say, these unfilled positions, eventually they'll be filled. And next year, they'll be there the whole year, probably. But,
Yeah.
do you think
Like
somebody,
the golf, you're always going to see golf course. I mean, the food attendants, the one, they're going to lose one, then a higher one. That one always fluctuates. So those 5, I think we got a pro, a shop operator, and 3 food attendants. But that one seems to change over a lot. Obviously, the water ones, a lot of them are, just the license. And you'll see later when you see as we go through this, and you see the groups of people that were changing ranges and moving up in salaries, it runs within that realm of these people where you see the openings are, because that's one of the hardest areas, wastewater, water plant, those where you need those operator licenses. They're in high demand, stealable from, any city or any place that steals them will steal them from you.
you're anticipating my question, and you probably answered. I was going to ask, do you think with those revised salary target levels that were reasonably competitive?
Yes, we
But
will.
you're saying some of the positions, we might have to look at how they're graded.
Right.
for food and beverage.
And you remember, a lot of these ones where you see the licenses on, sometimes we are underfill it. We'll get somebody who's got good prospects, bring them on board, and then they'll get their license while they're on board, and then they'll go from an underfilled position, which they're paid less than the regular position, they'll go up and take that position. So we don't necessarily always have to wait for the licensed person to come in. If we see a very good prospect, we'll bring him on, get him acclimated with the job he has to do while working towards getting the first, they'll go from license C, then your next goal is to get a license B, and then ultimately, if you go to the top, you get that license A and stuff. So we do underfill some of those positions to get them going, just because you need to train them in-house and then try to keep them.
Okay, and the budget resolution that we passed last time here, the BAC supports the 5% general employee salaries scheduled for October 1st, that was 5. Now we have minor, the 6th and the 7th.
Yeah, and again, this came from the BOC, so.
I think that's smart. Just,
be
you
right.
can't, if Target's paying $15 an hour, you're never gonna fill those positions.
We can say. Okay, so tell me, what is the consensus thought here? Do we need to pass a new resolution, or are we from the Budget Advisory Committee, or go with the current one? Because in the current one, we talk about 5%.
I like the new one, bringing him
I
closer.
I do, okay, so could you phrase a resolution?
All right, put me on the spot here. I'm new at this. Let's see.
Where's the other one? Let's change the number.
So am I making a motion then?
Yes.
Okay, I am making a motion that we adopt the new resolution of doing 7% for our lowest paid and 6% for our next lowest to bring them closer to the $15 an hour range, and then leaving the rest of it at the 5%.
Fair statement.
I'll second the motion.
Second. Can we take it to a vote?
Ms. Howard?
Yes.
Ms. Major?
Yes.
Ms. Engel?
Can I pass?
No, unless you have a conflict, and I don't see a conflict here.
Well, I just haven't been here, so, sure, I agree.
Ms. Hall is absent. Mr. Bergman?
Yes.
And Chair McCloy?
Yes.
So going on in this, that I'm gonna be presenting them, there's the next language you get to on page 2 is just that the charter officials, city clerk, city manager, auditor, they're all under the control of the commissioner, so they're not including this. The commission sets what those raises are, so that's just a statement that we put in there. The next list are the positions we're regrading and changing. And it's a rather long list. Most of them, again, are utility. You see the first group of them are utilities. And then we go into recreation, and recreation has been one that, recreation has probably been the last 2 years to look at, and we haven't done, it's just their time up to evaluate them and get them up to par, especially where they really excelled was during COVID. And I think our programs and what happened and what we were able to do over COVID rivaled or exceeded any of the other cities in the area for that bunch. And so they're deserving to get them a little more up into, we're seeing a little more competitiveness in that area. So it was time for them to come up in there and again, move in the different positions up. The next ones are some public work positions. The one that deals with the most are the heavy equipment operators. And again, that's another high level of demand that, the other cities will be looking for. And then finances turn was up. Ron's been backburnered probably, I know last year and the year before, but he got a chance. And again, you have a lot of these. Last year, you did probably a third or so of the water positions last year. These are some of the other ones that have come up. So we try to, year by year, address what we can within the budget. So some of these positions and requests may be a couple years old, but their time has come up to try to get to the monetary level where we think we can add these positions. So finance was up this year. And then probably one of the toughest positions and toughest competitive positions we have is the police dispatch services. Probably close to one of the most difficult in the city to fill and to keep and to have them on, because it's probably one of the toughest jobs we have in the city. So their increases were on there, and each of the department heads will be there tonight, and any questions of the boards about these, they'll be there to answer.
I must be, where are we looking? How many,
So-
is this new head counts
No.
or just adjusting?
These are just in positions, certain, especially dealing with positions that are the most competitive, the most
Okay.
that we need to keep up with other cities and stuff, which is why you're talking about, in Public Works, the heavy equipment operators, a couple of the other positions. You're talking about anybody in the water and the licensing and that realm. And we talked about recreation.
So what we're talking about now, Mark, is not new head count. It's,
These are all regrades of position.
got it, that's right.
So what is the standard for which it's graded to begin with? So, when you regrade, sounds like there's two ways to get someone's salary up. You're raising the minimums and maximums for each grade, and then you're also saying we can regrade it to a higher level. Is that due to a change in responsibility, or is it just another mechanism used to get the wage up?
One of them is responsibility. You'll see a lot of these in the extensive backup that you had. A lot of the responsibilities go up. And again, you look at, and we'll have the advantage. Unfortunately, it wasn't for now, but Dunedin was kind enough to spend $60,000 for an in-depth salary survey of all the cities. We're lucky enough for them because they need help with the other cities to compile information. And if we're a city that helps supply information, we're going to get the results for $0 that they're paying $60,000 for. So we'll have a lot better idea, of where this is going to put us when that gets done, probably towards the end of the year and stuff. These are the adjustments we can see now because, we know what's going on with the other cities. But we're going to have a lot better idea when we go into this next budget season, because we're going to have a good document to try to gauge these and where we are, and not learn where we are because all of a sudden a bunch of people leave,
Right.
and you see Clearwater's giving them $5,000, $8,000 more to go to them, and we're out of whack then and fix them. So we're seeing that, we're doing that way to see now.
So Mark, is our bump against the 5 or 6 cities that are full service cities in the area, is that our,
Well, the smaller ones will go for the positions that are in need. The smaller ones will go after these people too, because they have to have them.
so it's,
So everybody's sharking us. So,
okay.
which is why we try to keep up with them, and they can't now. Private enterprise, you can't
Competitive.
compete with.
Landscape is all cities within a reasonable,
Yeah.
15, 20 miles of here, 30 miles. Okay. I mean, it doesn't have a New York City or Chicago in it.
No.
That would be kind of
No, you can't do anything about those and their salaries.
Yeah, if you want
You
to
can't,
move to New
you
York.
can't compete against them. You just got to lose them.
Okay.
So yeah, these ones where we said they're just regrades, reclassifying them, but they're all positions. They're all positions right now, and the people in the positions. So these were the ones that are up for this year, and these are the ones the commission's going to review tonight, and what we hear from tonight will revise this document to bring forward Tuesday night. Again, because these have to be in resolution, these can't be adopted in the budget, these have to be adopted by resolution.
resolution.
So, that's why we'll be bringing those to them tonight.
So if I'm reading this right, some of them, we're trying to increase grades by up to 2 grades and a 7.5% increase.
Then they're called out
I mean,
7
that's
and
like
all on
P
top
and
of that,
Q.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking, yeah. So they're currently 15, but we want to, you're asking that they regrade to 17. And in addition to getting the pay raise for grade 17, another 7.5%. So
Yes,
that's a huge increase.
it's a good one, yes.
And you feel that's what we need to do.
Unless we're gonna start losing. When you lose one, they'll pay for the whole, trying to replace that one, pays for the whole thing. So,
Is the
It's just-
implication here, and I'm just asking, we're not trying to shoot HR in the foot. We might have been a little behind the
Sounds like it.
times, and we're really catching up now.
well, if you remember last year, you might have had the same number, maybe a little less. We're trying to catch up, but you couldn't catch up last year's and this year's. So we're trying to catch up the ones we didn't catch up from last year. So, yeah, some of them we've seen the need for a while, but it's just so many you can fit into one budget and move along with, so.
But now we're also kind of in a forced situation, because if we don't, good chance they might
Yes.
disappear somewhere else.
I tell you what, as a retired teacher, man, I would love to get a 2-grade increase and 7.5%, just once in my career.
So, to be clear, so we're regrading, and however we want to construe that term. And then with the regrade, we're gonna give you a salary increase even though you didn't have that to begin with. So wouldn't it be better just to do the regrade and give them the big bump and then pass on the other?
Yeah, I didn't know there were 2 levers we were gonna pull, like, I mean, I'm wrapping my head around that. I knew the one, the increase, and then this is like another one.
It's like saying, I'm gonna make you fire chief, and then I'm gonna give you a raise for your service. It's just like, I don't know.
You haven't
It's a
done that.
lot. This is
Yeah.
a big, big jump.
Yeah, and it's a jump that you do 2 or 3 months of study and knowing what other people's do to get to where you need to be to keep your people.
I was gonna say.
And again, when you watch tonight, tune in tonight and see if they bring the people up for the presentations of how they got to it, because we could take a whole meeting now and 3 to where they got to that number from, the analysis, the study of the places in the region. I mean, there's a whole realm of things. It's just not made up and throw out a thing. It's a lot of studies the department go in, especially the water rates and the intensity of the study to try to get these to the people. You got to remember, sometimes it's due to where people were started out 4 or 5 years ago, and so you got a 5-year person here in a position like recreation, and compared what other people are making, other places it could be different. There's a lot of different reasons why these people are not sitting in a salary position where they should be sitting, which is what all of the department heads have to analyze, look at, and then bring forward when they're bringing these forward to justify.
So at the end of the day, just take an individual position.
Yes.
I'm talking theoretically. Study comes in and it has a number or range for that position. And no matter how you get from A to B, whether you say you're talking about a combination of 2 grade changes and salary changes. But at the end of the day, you're coming up within that targeted range.
And again, you're trying to get your new grade in your position to actively reflect what you're doing at the city of Tarpon compared to what you're doing in the city of Dunedin, because Dunedin might call it something else. But here, they do the same duties, but they're classified, their just grade ended up being lower. So you're not only trying to bring the salary up, but their duties, you're trying to bring the duties up to what their duties are compared to what the duty of the same employee in another city is making.
Who do we use to collect this information? We use a third party to get the competitive landscape?
No, in fact, when we started it, we piggybacked off Pinellas Parks to try to get the,
Yeah.
and they spent 60,000 again, close to, and we just piggybacked on it. And then we've kept up every year. We look at the salary surveys. One of our people, Judy Staley, works with HR, and we get, we know what the raises are, we know what the changes are in all the other cities. And that's why you see this movement every year where we try to move to compete with them. Now we've got another study going on that we can piggyback on. And I think when that study gets finished and stuff, I think everything we're doing today, we're going to be right there on the right side of the middle. You'll hear me use that term all the time. We don't try to be the lowest salaries. We don't want to be, because we'll lose them. And then the cost of replacing the position, the money you gave for these raises, you're going to spend a lot more with empty position trying to raise a position. So the job is we think when this salary study comes up, these changes will put us right in that middle. We're not the top, we're not the bottom, we're in the competitive middle. We're not going to compete with the top, with St. Pete. A lot of those positions we're not going to compete with. But if we're right there, right where everybody else is, where most people are, then we've got the best chance to compete. And that's why we think these changes will put us, when we get the results of that study, we're going to be where we need to do. And if we don't, the commission is going to be told when that comes back, there may be some other adjustments we have to make, or be ready for next year to go where those goes. You got to remember, a lot of these other cities, don't be fooled by what they say their raise is, because they may say their raise is 4%, their cost of living, but they also get steps, or they get other things which are 3 and 4%. So, they're just getting a 4% cost of living. Yeah, but they've got a step, so that's 3 there, so the 4 and the 3 is the 7. We don't have that. It's just one raise that we have. So some of the times these people get ahead of us because of the different bumps. St. Pete now, I think, is doing something to all their employees, just a set amount of money that they're going to raise besides their raises, besides what they do. They're giving some dollar figure, $1,200 or something, and they just get that, and the employees just get that, and raise their up that way.
A one-timer? That doesn't necessarily imply that if it's 1,200, would come into next year. But
Yeah, so there's a lot of different ways the cities are doing things that you have to, try to compare what you're doing. You have to compare the total dollars to what they're doing. They do it in a little different ways, but
So you're taking this to the board.
Well, in their third work session, we're able to take it to a work session ahead of time. We'll listen to their comments, what they have to say on it. First thing tomorrow morning, since we don't have a week because we changed the meeting we'll have to get first thing tomorrow morning and revise this memo for their thoughts on there. To bring back for their vote for the resolution. I mean, if they're against something or not particularly for it or not ready to go, then there's no sense us to bring it forward in the resolution. So they'll have a chance tonight to see what they think on it, and we'll see where it goes.
From the Budget Advisory Committee, is there anything you think we should be?
Now, again, usually you don't even see this portion. You usually don't see this portion of the budget. It's always done at the end. It's always based on the best figures you can get, because these other cities are in the same jockeying too. I mean, they haven't finalized their. We're thinking they're at this 5, 6 instead. They could be less, or some of them are even talking about, again, like the commission talked about in the 5, 5, and 5. Some of these commissions are looking at maybe another bump, or like I said, St. Pete's 1,200, some other things for their employees. So,
And then you're locked in and you have a year to just suffer the consequence of that.
or you can come, you can come mid-year with something. I mean, you could come. For instance, there's some drastic difference in the Dunedin study when it's done. You could come back. You may have to find, since you've dedicated the money in the budget, if it's a money thing, you might have an issue of where you're going to get the money from, but. You can always address it.
But you're pushing most of this to 10-1, correct, to make it a
Yes.
23 budget item.
Yes.
So this is just for me to understand.
Yeah.
A lot of this, is this being, like, so I'm in private industry, and we recently had to give someone a very significant increase in pay, like 25%, because they were that valuable to us, didn't want to lose them, they were gonna have to leave the area because the rent went up, but I get to make that decision just like that on a one-person basis, but you can't do that because it has to be in this.
We're real
So
constrained.
you're, so you're trying to make your parameters work so that when you have those things come up, you can do the things you need to do within the limits of what you've got outlined.
Exactly.
Okay, I just want to make
And
sure.
again, it's the best guess scenario. We've been good over the years. I mean, we've been real good at this. So, because a lot of people put in a lot of work in their field to get these numbers and see where they are. Again, this is probably 3 months of work. So, and getting figures right up to the last minute of anybody changed, anybody moved anything, anybody done anything. And, obviously, September when there's still September when the public hearings are on the budget to do something. But, we just got to make a best guess of, where the other city is going to be so we can just move the same day. All we want to do is kind of move the same day move. So we're in the same place we were this year as we were last year.
So in terms of new headcounts, that doesn't come into play now, doesn't come in until much later. We know we had.
New headcount's going to come in next because that's the next thing I'm talking about.
Gets
Well,
one
that now I start to have pain. Don't.
It's no different than we did.
It's a misnomer in the accounting where they call salaries a variable cost because they're really hard to get rid of once they're on board. Okay.
Yeah. Again, in the other section you don't see on here, the thing you don't see on there because we're waiting for tonight is the new positions because that's usually on here. It's not on here because we didn't recommend any from this angle. We've left it to the board. We did give the board, I think we talked about last time. I think you got a document
We
about.
made a recommendation.
And, yeah. So again, we're not, the commission has to tonight because we have to look at the money that they have left in the budget. There's three really things the commission has to look at tonight and be done with because they don't have another shot at it. If they're gonna reduce the millage rate any. So far, the indications they're following your recommendation and up to the 2, they're following it. I don't see it changing tonight, but they have to do that.
Hoping that they're sticking with the millage.
Then they have to,
And then we accommodate
yeah.
capital expenditures.
Then they have to decide if they're gonna do any of the new positions. And all I gave them was last year, remember, they did the long list of positions
Yep.
we may need over 3 to 5 years.
Yep.
All I gave them was if I was to be asked what importance there was, what there would be, 6, because there's some other things on here. So we gave that to them, I think, the very beginning to look at. It included a police officer, police civilian, some positions in public works. The grant writer one that's been of issue, and the only thing, again, I told you we changed about that was, a grant writer at the basic level doesn't help me anybody. I'd have to have someone who could not only write the grant, but could administrate it.
Project manager.
Yes, it's just not gonna help. So,
Actually, when I look in, and you can agree, disagree, with I know you'll cover capital expenditures projects. There's a lot out there right now.
There's a
And
whole lot.
you need somebody, a project management with their software. They can get very anal, but they can keep it on track.
they do. So this list ended up a total of $460,000 from the general fund. Again,
New head counts?
yeah. If they did them all.
And how many, roughly?
7.
So,
If they did them all, which we're not recommending, we're not even recommending one of them. Most of these have come up for positions that they've talked about. they talked about the public works position because they want more done, you know, over the demands of beautification, everything we've done the past years. We've done it without manpower. So obviously, it's hard for us to keep up with what would be done, and they really like it kept up better. Well, to get it kept up better, you're gonna have to add positions, or we'll just have to get by with the workforce we got, and we'll get it done as we get it done.
Tonight's meeting is no comments from the public.
Right, it's a work,
Even though I'll be there,
it's a work session.
there's one I'd like to hit
It's
pretty hard on.
it's a work, well, you'll have a chance Tuesday night at the,
Yeah,
when
that's
it comes for the resolution point. And I don't know what they're gonna do. Again, they've got to decide, they've got $632,000 in general fund money that's unobligated. That they can
the
throw to
reserve.
projects, they can throw to people. All these things, now we're into the realm of we can't cover this. All this that we gave you up to now, we can cover with no additions, no nothing. We can
Right.
cover in the budget. Ron's got the budget balanced and set to go. If they go to these, then they're going into their $600,000 of discretionary money, which commission discretion. What do you want to? What projects? What equipment? What people? What do you want to put it in?
Which I'm going to come to in a roundabout way a little further back, but
Yeah, so if you want to add any of these positions, we need to know that, because we got to bring it forward to the budget resolution. And then we got to account for a subtraction from the $438,311. Subtract from there what what is there.
the 438 is the delta now.
If you did if you filled all the positions.
Oh, okay.
If
Okay.
you did all 7 of those from general fund, because we're talking about general fund, there are also a couple more positions from water and sewer, but those are completely water and sewer positions they're gonna deal with. They won't affect their $638,000. And these are positions that were planned when they did the water structure. They kind of did positions down the road. They needed 5 positions. They weren't filling 5 now. They were going to go in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and fill them. There's 2 that they need to look at for those, but those won't affect the bottom line of the general fund budget, the tax budget. These are the positions that'll affect that.
And I know our recommendation as the BAC was a little on the soft side, where we said headcount should be minimized in 2000.
If you remember,
My strong urge was to say 0, but I knew that wasn't,
well, you supported me.
only consider positions absolutely essential to maintain the excellent service provided by Tarpon Springs.
And again, that's their, I'm leery. I was leery last year. I really didn't ask for positions last year I was given. But the board felt they're important, because I always worry because they're recurring costs, recurring positions.
Right.
And again, you can freeze them and stuff. You certainly don't want to, if the money gets
Right.
tight, you don't want to lay somebody off in a bad, because if you're doing this in a bad economy, in a bad situation, and you don't want to lay people off. So to further complicate matters, there's another issue that's come up with public safety. And I know you've seen the articles of the contracts. You saw what Tampa did for their public safety people, 9% raises, and the cities that have contracts up, we have contracts up next year, but the ones that have contracts up this year are gonna be matching some of that big money that the other places are given. So for the board's consideration, and consideration only at the request of the unions, they would like, and again, they're in a contract, so we have no obligation to give to them anything. Obviously, next year, Ron and I talked 2 months ago when we learned about all these contracts gonna be exorbitant increases, that we better start stashing money away for next year, because our negotiations, our contract next year, were gonna be monstrous for police and fire. So we already knew that. So this would be a case where we would ease that, still gonna be a big one, but we could ease it. And again, this started from the police union, a request, met with the mayor and met with me. And obviously, I told them from my position that fire is in the exact same boat. In fact, some of their raises that we're gonna see the cities do are sometimes more exorbitant than the police raises. So whatever we give you would have to be doubled, because we can't give to you and not give the fire, in my estimation, that the commission couldn't do that, because it's the same for both of them. Both contracts are up for next year. So that's where you see, so the commission has an option from that money that they have available, if they want, in addition to their contract benefits that were negotiated in the contract, a 1%, 2%, or 3% raise. And those figures are, you should have in, I'm pretty sure y'all have them. You know, what those numbers are. And that's strictly something that the board, is not a recommendation, it's something the board needs to consider and make a decision on. Again, if you did the 3% for both police and fire, you're talking about $221,000. If you did a 2%, it'd be a $147,000. If you did 1%, it'd be $73,000.
And doing it when?
October 1,
October 1. And the contract is, what,
one more year. It's up October 1 of 2023.
What's the benefit of doing it before you have to?
You're easing the amount that you're gonna have to do in the 23 contract.
How is it easing it? It's gonna be the same amount of an increase, you're just paying more now.
You'd just be you'd be ahead of them, and you'd be offsetting now for any losses you might have. The theory is, if these go up on October 1st, we've got a year we got to sit and wait for somebody to steal us.
so the current contracts, I think I heard, but are up October 1st, 23?
Yes. But this is strictly a board, this is strictly, hey, this is a request brought forward, board, here's the money you have left to do, do you want to entertain that or not entertain it? It's been asked, it's brought to you to entertain, and it's really strictly a board decision of where the board wants to go. And you know, Tampa made it pretty clear that they did it, and they're gonna go after Pinellas County people. I mean, they're gonna go after Pinellas County public safety people.
So to be honest,
How many do they
the
get?
last two issues we talked about
Goodness.
can't be viewed separately, you know, the safety
saying the same
and
thing.
the other head count.
Yeah,
I'm sorry to say, I was an HR person for 4 years. It's all dollars.
all dollars. And all recurring dollars,
recurring.
all recurring dollars. They don't go away next year.
No, they don't.
So is this a massive hit expected to take on the police, which is already, I learned in the Citizens Academy, is like 50% of our budget or something like that. Is that taken into consideration before you increase all of those ranges on those other positions? Like, is next year gonna be a rough year? I'm just,
No, because again, because of the tax increase, because of the millage increase, the commissions usually, if they have 100,000 discretionary money to decide what to do besides balance the budget, 200,000 is a good year. I think that one year, and you were on, they had 230,000, it was ecstatic. Whoa, we got 230 to play. This year, because of the tax increase, they've got 638,000 there.
And
Again,
that's
what do
why
you-
later on, I want to discuss
I have
something
that.
about our, you know, at one point, now this is a month or two, over a month ago, that gap was 478, and I remember after the 78,000, after we got the tax information back, it jumped to 630, and now the reserved amount, I mean, call it the squeeze number, because you're right, that squeeze number could go toward people, could go toward the reserve, could go toward projects.
all those projects you see out there not funded. And that's strictly a board direction and decision.
Okay.
be another late night next week.
Can we, it's gonna be tough. Are you able to talk to where we stand on capital projects. The reason, here's where I'm coming at the end game, so everybody knows. As part of our recommendation at that point in time, and you always make a recommendation on the knowledge you know at that point in time. We were recommending that the money go toward the reserve. And it's grown since then. But I've been in these sessions with the capital expenditures. I call these capital expenditures. It's back to my corporate. The projects. It appears that we have a lot that we could really get done. A lot that needs to be done. And I know we have the $12.8 million, but
And they're gonna be talking about that tonight too.
I'm just, yeah. Are they going to, obviously, they're going to talk about the projects once.
Yeah.
This isn't.
That's
you've done-
an update from the last two budgets, the two budget workshops. Here we are, the updated document where we are.
My compliments to you and your team. You took the project from here with each of the two meetings, you narrowed it down. Somewhere, the end of the line is coming up here.
Yeah.
Probably tonight.
And if you see, a lot of these, we've either got funded or we've got where there's potential funding, whether we're gonna go for grants for these positions, whether we're gonna wait till a future penny. If you look at that first page, I think the first big page you have up that deals with the ARPA money. You know, we've moved some of those projects to the second page. And if you see, most of them, we've identified strategies of going forward and funding these. Some we're not sure yet, but you'll see the different categories like federal grant funding, current penny funding, the penny for this year, penny for next year, and then others, which the to be determined ones are to be determined. We don't have quite a place for it, but we've categorized a lot of those projects. Instead of being $30 million that needs to be funded, we've kind of evaluated them and listened to the board in their two meetings and kind of narrowed this front page down, which is something they need to deal with directly on ARPA funds, what they're going to spend with. Tonight, we hope to get some commitments on a couple more of the ARPA funds to definitely be funded so we can move them up. You see where it says at the top, approved ARPA projects. Those have already been approved. Hopefully, we're going to move some of those proposed projects up. We don't have to do them all because we don't have to spend all the money now. But
We have until the end of
yeah,
'24.
but again, we got to get started on some of
Got
these.
to. You gotta.
We gotta
And
get
the only way to get started is get somebody to say, these are it.
Yeah, so tonight, again, and there's several developments ongoing with that. The Craig Park seawall, for instance, which is a big dollar one at $5 million. We're looking at some other sources for that money that maybe we can take that off the ARPA funding, because there may be some other opportunities, either scaling of the project or possibly some other available monies. We'll be telling the board tonight that the Beckett Bridge utility location, which is our responsibility. They're doing the dredge, but we have to relocate our utilities that go under the water. That's a $2 million project. We're able to announce tonight that this week we have joined Pinellas County and we put in for a federal grant that we think we have a great chance of winning to do not only the bridge project, but to incorporate our utility project into the bridge project funding from the federal level, and hopefully that $2 million is going to come off the board of any aspect, because that money is going to be funded. And the county was nice enough to contact us, join us in the process, and
How did you do all that without a full-time grant writer?
well, we've done a lot without a full.
Position.
Yeah. Yeah, he's remembering some of my arguments, shaking my head about the real need that we get none when you see our grants list on the thing of all the grants we've got. So that's a great announcement that's just happened within the last week that we're going to announce tonight. If you see, we've moved that money from the Beckett Bridge, which is underwater and sewer. We moved that money. We'll be moving that money out, and we're going to be involved in that we'll be involved in that potential grant funding for the bridge that we're going out. So some of their ARPA decisions are not only they don't have to make tonight, like the Craig Park, because we're still doing some more work on it, but we've already taken a $2 million off that we don't have to fund from somewhere else. Because all these are our funds, we've already taken that one off. So
There's still a lot of, even taking the big ones off, there's still,
there still are.
and then they have to narrow down between ARPA and if they don't go ARPA, how we're going to fund it.
So that list they're going to get tonight, they're going to get good
Or
news.
is the board considering at all, if you remember, Ron made a presentation, a financing one. I'm gonna say, he made it several, but 5 or 6 million, because the balance sheet of Tarpon Springs is not heavily levered. I know we have the water issue out there, water project bond. We have a couple leases for fire trucks, but I think that's about it in terms of debt.
I think the board is going to take more time beyond the budget to look at that issue. I don't think that's one's going to be done now. I think they're going to want more study, more looks at the ramifications, the different options and stuff. So I think that's one you may be able to weigh. I think that's going to be a moving issue that's at least 2 or 3 months away from even getting some ideas, because everybody's got to digest and do that, because that's such a big step. So I don't think that's going to be something they're going to solve tonight or in this budget right now, what they're going to do for what they're left with. I think it's going to be an ongoing discussion, and the longer the discussion, the better, because once you make that decision and if you decide to go with whichever aspect of bonds or, the revenue things that Ron said, whichever way you go, once you go to it, you're stuck with it, and you're stuck with it. Future commissions are stuck with it. So hopefully there's going to be a lot more thought, and so I think there's going to be a lot of more talk and discussions before they come up. When we end to the final things of what projects we want to do that we can't do on here, I think we've given options in future years and future pennies, and give us another year or two with all these grants coming out from all the federal and state level. Give us a shot at getting some of those first. And then maybe moving into that if we strike out on everything, which we haven't been striking out on. So I don't think, we'll see tonight if that changes. I don't think that's going to be an immediate decision that they're going to deal with.
Because in our recommendation, we're recommending that Delta go into the reserve.
Which is still an option. At
It's still
6:30.
an option,
That's
but
still an
even,
option.
I think you make a decision in time based on the facts and that was 35, 45 days ago. After sitting through these sessions, I really believe there's enough projects out there that we as a Tarpon Springs can maintain their level of reserves, roughly 8.7, 8.8, without adding to it. I'm kind of hoping it doesn't come up that somebody says we should reduce the millage on the taxes.
And again, the good
If I had
news,
the perfect world, I'd say, forget about taxes, don't reduce, don't increase headcount, but go ahead and take this money and put toward the projects.
so that's my world at 6:30. That's a lot of what we're going to be. There's other things we'll be discussing tonight, but this is the bulk of what we'll be discussing tonight with the board to get their direction and where they're going with it as we try to finalize it. I think you've got this second page on there. A lot of these things were original cuts from the budget, but we have found room or replace projects, because these were some of these were some priorities of the board in the first two meetings. They really wanted the roof and AC replacements and building replacements. They wanted them done now, even if we.
Are you looking at this?
I'm looking at the second one.
Okay.
You have the one chart, I'm looking at, the second one kind of goes into it too, because you're talking about funded projects and not funded projects. A lot of these were original cuts or hold on the budgets, and this is all we've been able, we ranked them. If you see the priority, top priority is 1, 2, and 3 on priorities, meaning the 2s and the 3s we could fund in future years. Like that roof probably has another year on it and stuff. But we kind of changed the priorities because the board indicated pretty early that their buildings were a priority, and they didn't want a chance to, we probably got 1 or 2 years on a roof because the way things have been going, something happens and it doesn't make it, and then you're correcting a building. So they really want that priority pushed up. So all of the ones on here, all of the ones priority Ron has found and funded without touching any of the other funds. We found and funded most of the ones. And we've gone a good way on the 2s for the commission. So the commission should be happy tonight when they get this, because a lot of the priorities they wanted us to find, whether we had to cut something else or do something to find things to fund. They really had an emphasis on what is needed from buildings. And again, Ron with his magic, again, was able to fund all the number 1 priorities and into the number 2. So
I have to admit something, I might be blind here. Where am I seeing the breakdown 1, 2s, and 3s?
in priority, the first column,
Priority.
Column, the other sheet.
Oh, there's another,
It's on it.
you tricked me, there's another,
these are Ron's, this is the spreadsheet.
Ron, include everything on one. Okay.
Well, the board has to deal with them differently, so we wanted the board not to confuse. We're trying to, all of this, like I say, there's so much going on, and we try to make it less confusing, so we try to separate the ARPA
now
and
it
the other
makes
things.
sense.
Okay. So these are based on the priority of the cut list. They saw the things, not necessarily cut, I call it the cut list, but they're not funded right now to balance the budget, but, they were on there. The board, these are some of the priorities that the boards mentioned in the first workshop. Hey, we really want you to try to fund those. So Ron was able to go into everybody's budget and maybe take something else out and replace it and get a lot of these things that the board generated. So they should be very happy with this list because it met what we learned in the first 2 budget sessions from them.
So right now, without doing, how much do you see, because I think you mentioned a number earlier, but I wanted to make sure, is that delta? In other words, if we do nothing, the amount that would go into the reserves is,
$638,311.
okay.
If we do not, if we've got all these things set, budgeted, done, except for the decisions that we're giving them the options of their decisions, so they could do none of them now and either put that towards the project we don't have funded in here yet. They could pick one, hey, we definitely want to do that, want to move that there. They could put it in reserve for when they decide later they can leave it as an open, they can leave it in the budget, I think what Ron calls the category, but unobligated. They could leave it, if they don't want to put it in a reserve right now, but want to think about it more, it would be unobligated general funds. It would be in the budget, and then a November meeting, a December meeting, January, hey, we want to take 200,000 of this and we want to do something at the library or do something here and use the money then. So they've got several different options within the budget, go to reserve. They've got all those options. They don't have to commit that money.
So the 628,000 of the decisions to be made tonight that potentially would take from that is the police and fire increase?
If they change the millage rate, and if they decide to reduce the millage rate, any of the new positions, or if they do the police or fire additional.
So the budget's balanced already inclusive of the potential changes in pay rates and
Yes.
and the classifications? Okay,
Yes.
that's the part I was missing
Yes,
there.
that budget is all balanced. A lot of that money.
That includes that piece,
Yeah.
even the 13 to 15s and that kind of like okay.
Includes everything that's presented on that page of the increase. That's why we separated new positions out of there.
I got you.
That'll be in there in the final document on Tuesday, but we separated it out because this was the balanced budget portion of what we were able to balance the budget this year. These have to come from the only available fund that we have, and that's that
So-
extra money.
I got you. So adding all of these positions and increasing the max 3% of police and fire would eat up that 628,000 pretty much?
Yes.
If they did all of that.
If they decide
So
to
you're
do
just
all that.
presenting them with those options of ways to spend the money, and then they're
Yes.
gonna decide. Gotcha.
Yes.
And I should bring a sock and put it in my mouth.
You need a muzzle?
And just for the benefit of everybody, the amount, the 8.8, is it 8.8 in round numbers?
Yeah.
We've always said that should be at least 20% of what? That's a minimum. I know
That's
it's
the required minimum, that's the,
Percent of the
Required
general
by-
fund budget.
required by Tarpon or legal?
we've got, I think it's in code, or, I mean, we're mandated by
Okay.
code, or,
Okay.
I think we've
And it's
mandated.
currently roughly 30, I remember Ron showing a chart. It's 30, 32, okay. So if one was to leave it at the 8.8 million, giving us another 638,000. Okay.
And there's been no talk of going, obviously, they could go into the reserve and say, well, it's 800, 8,800,000, let's keep, take 800,000. They have not said a word, and no one's mentioned it, no one's brought that up, but, any of these funding mechanisms,
My
so.
good ex-neighbor, Mr. Carr, has kind of,
But again, even if they
Danced around
even
the
if they
edge.
don't listen to the recommendation and put any of this money in it, at least you're making them think of not touching, not touching what's in there now. But there's been no discussion on that, so that isn't even brought up on the table.
We could leave
We're not bringing it to the table.
I'll be honest, just for open discussion, I was going to wonder when we got to it, would it be about knowing what we know now versus then? Would we be better not recommending taking that to the reserve, but recommending a specific action for it? Taking it to the capital projects, for instance. I'd hate to see it, anything gobbled up by the millage decrease. We just, maybe in the future, not now.
Right now, I only see one going that way. Obviously, they need three, so right now, I only see one. There's only any indication of one thinking to lower the millage rate, so.
It's like the politically
I don't
correct thing.
think
but
that's
then-
gonna happen.
Okay.
But again, I'm not sure, remember, we got a real new board, so
Yeah.
whereas we had a board before, I kind of predict which way they're gonna
Yeah.
go in some of these things. I'm not sure, I can just gauge from the first two budget hearings, and they're all learning, they're learning a lot of it, and they've got far more on their plate than any of the commissions had on there. I mean, they're than the veteran commissions, this is far more with all the dynamics of this budget, they're dealing with, a lot more than the normal board deals
Tough
with.
when you have a lot of money to spend.
Does anybody remember, I don't know, it was 10 or 15 years ago, I remember this well. I had a little wooden house on the water in Ozona, and I could have refinanced it for $1.5 million. This little house I bought for $150,000. And I didn't, because I have the opinion that just because you can doesn't mean you should. It's like someone's gonna offer you drugs, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. So, so I look back to that time, and I think about the hiring that I did in my company, and the people with master's degrees and PhDs and everything else willing to work for minimum wage, and the bottom completely fell out, okay? So now I'm looking at today, and I see the exact same thing happening with, of course, the property values. It's absurd. Coupled with the supply chain issues and the labor shortage issues, and I see something astronomically way far worse in our future. So here we are talking about these massive salary increases of the tail wagging the dog, basically, because we're afraid we're gonna lose these people. And are we really being prudent in terms of what's really about to happen? And we set the bar on these high salary things, and I'm just saying, and it kind of gets back to what you're saying of being careful of using that increase up, because, and I really want everyone's opinion here, does anybody remember this from 10 or 15 years ago, what happened? And how, I mean, I had people, I would clamoring, people begging for jobs, begging with high-level degrees to make $9 an hour, okay? And now, of course, you can't hire anybody. And I just have a feeling that pendulum is about to swing within the next 12 months. So that's why I'm mirroring his thoughts about being conservative.
I think
with
there's a
monies.
good chance that property values will not stay where they are. However, in Florida, I think they might, I think they really might, because of how many people are relocating here, and the change in workforce is just so radically different. I don't know if we can really gauge the future based on the past quite the same, because things are so different. But that said, the reason why I'm glad that we did make the recommendation to save the money, we're at least making the recommendation to be cautious, because I am thinking, what if next year the values aren't where they are, but we still have this requirement to increase the police contract? That's the imbalance that I'm most fearful of, is that
Which is
that
50%
will
of our
stay.
budget.
Yeah, which is 50% of our budget. So that is where my brain is, that I don't think property values will stay where they are. I don't think we will see quite that labor. I don't foresee that as much as I do in property.
I'm willing to
definitely wouldn't
cover
bank
all
on it.
bets. I'll take lower than 14% next year. Anybody want over?
But that said, so
14%.
yeah, I think that might come down, but
I don't
anyway.
think a two-bedroom house with one bedroom in Holiday, Florida is gonna go for $250,000 next year. I don't see it happening in a crack neighborhood. That's what I see. It's not just the waterfront pretty homes. I see outrageous things happening, and the rents of people, they can't even, their rent goes from $800 to $1,600 a month on a single-bedroom apartment. It's out of control what is going on, and if you look at it in total, it's completely out of control. Something's gonna break.
I agree with that. I just don't know that we're gonna have people willing to work for $9 an hour again. I'm not gonna bank on that as much as I will the
But
property.
I see HR's role, being, what is the situation right now? And that's what we're trying to address. The rule, a year from now, if everything should go to hell, rules can be adjusted. What you're trying to say, what's the market out there, right? That's all you're doing. Okay, so next year, if the market, how you sit in manager, as an example, if next year the market for city manager is 75,000, well, that's the market. Okay, so you're probably not going to reduce anybody's salary, but you're going to.
Well, we went through that before. We went years, and, since I've been around the age of dinosaurs, I know, but going back just to the times that she was talking about, we had years when the city employees didn't get any, right? You got 0% raise.
This smacks of a catch-up. It
And
really
we,
does.
and they were hoping for next year you could get 2 or 3%. Maybe, hopefully, you're praying you could get maybe a 2% next year or 3%. And we had probably 2009, 10, 11, around that area. We had some years where we gave the lower people and the higher management and stuff got 0, and we tried to get them, the lower paid ones, 2 or 3, and management got 0. I mean, that's happened before, and that's what happens to you. But when it happens to you, the rest of the cities is happening too. So you're not losing that place. You're trying to stay in your, just to the good side of middle. As long as you stay there, the other cities that are doing all these things that, believe me, we're sitting in meetings the last 3 months going, you're doing what? They're doing what? You're increasing what? I remember the county administrator almost fell out of his chair when he heard about what some of the raises were, because he'd planned a simple 3% raises for his people, and some of the other cities were knocking him out of his chair. But the thing is, if it goes the wrong way, we're going to still be able to stay in that same place, because they're not going to be able to give raises either. We're going to be stuck in the same place.
But we'll be stuck paying that higher amount.
And your property taxes will go down.
Yeah, and so, I do foresee a world, I'm surprised that we have so many empty positions based on where some of the pay rates are. I know that private sector, I wouldn't leave a city employment job right now for private sector. I mean,
But these people do. They don't see that. They can't see beyond the.
Does smack, again,
But we can't compete with them. We've already said,
that we were probably behind a few catch-ups. This thing with the bumping against the market needs to be.
we recognized a long time ago, especially with our building inspectors and stuff. Private sector was coming in, bringing $25,000 and taking them. We can't compete with that. I mean, we can't. We're not going to compete with that. The $25,000, $30,000 for people who have inspecting abilities, who have licenses in the different trades and stuff. But you got to keep up with the cities. So, computer people, IT people, the private sector will easily come in and swipe somebody $30,000 rate. We can't compete with that. We just got to stay within the cities and stuff, and the ones we lose. There's no competition with private sector. So, because when those fields come up and are needed, But again, what you try to tell the employees, okay, that's good for you now and your dollar line now. Is that guaranteed? Do you have the benefits you have with it? There's all those other factors too, but a lot of people just see that dollar sign and leave, and believe me, there's a lot of them who've called back and regretted that leaving, because in 5 years, the situation changed, and you wish you would have stayed. And
So, as the BAC, we have a recommendation out there to take the excess. This number's moved, and retain it in the reserves. That's what we have out there right now.
And I still like that
I do too.
recommendation, because
We stick with
I
it,
think
yeah.
that, what's the harm, and then a year from now, if everything doesn't, fall apart in the way that we think it might, great, then there's more to spend, then let's, whatever. But I think there's just so many unknowns right now. I love that recommendation still.
Okay, I'm good with staying. Tell me one thing, define it for me, just so we have the reserves, and you talked about unallocated. Let's say hypothetically, we wanted to do a project in the future that's $2 million. Could that money come out of the 8.8 million if we wanted to? I'm just saying.
Yes.
How restricted is that 8.8 million?
no, they'd be able to take it from the reserve. They do a project. If project of necessity came up, they had the reserve.
The difference between the reserve and the unallocated isn't material.
Not really.
So
Because
put
you
it in
still,
reserve,
if you
spend
didn't
all that
leave
ARPA
this,
money.
if you didn't leave this in unallocated, a line in the budget, you got 600 unallocated, which would roll over. If it was put in reserve, it's a simple thing. You just go to reserve and take the 600 out to do something with, or you go right, it's a commission move anyway. It's a vote, it's just the difference of the vote. So you could put it there, but,
I'll throw
Yeah.
my two, I'm fine leaving our BAC recommendation as is.
That's good. I think that's good. Well, because then we already have all that ARPA money to be spent. Like, there's a lot to happen. And they could, if you put it in the reserve, if they really needed to do a project, can go get it pretty easily. It's not like they're gonna spend it all on the 2nd of October.
It's like putting in your
possibly
savings
do it.
account. If you really want to access it, you can.
Right.
You want to buy a new Corvette, you can. Okay, is there any other issue in this area? Any questions? Okay, should be an interesting meeting tonight.
it should be.
Don't
Without
make it one
Ron.
of those 4 o'clock meetings.
Without Ron,
But I'm thinking you guys are gonna be up till 3.
Ron, to make a short story long, no, that's. Okay, what's the next item? I would like to table till the next meeting, because I really want everybody to be present. I know Melody at the prior meeting, I'm talking about the issue, the time of the meeting. You couldn't be present, and we suggested.
But IT said they can't.
No,
Well-
IT's letter was
well, here's the whole thing.
What did IT say?
They said
So,
nothing,
yeah.
basically.
They can't
So-
support it.
Obviously, with the new board and stuff, we went back to Zoom and we have got 2 people that run all the productions and everything of all these meetings that convert it and put it on YouTube, put it on the website. run the meetings, tape it now, do all the work and stuff on the meetings, which has increased now because anytime you do the Zooms and stuff, you have to have 2 of those people instead of 1. So all of their time, which I didn't realize until it was brought up, all of their times, because they're also the same people who do the productions, the Beauty and the Beast, anything in this room on weekend stuff. 2 people handle all the productions and handle the meetings and stuff.
I keep
Almost
hearing-
all those times,
About increase. Go.
almost all those times, well, that may be down the road, just not this. All those times are evenings and nights. So what you would have to do somebody would have to double back and do a day shift at 9 o'clock because, they may be doing something now. And for instance, most of the time on like a Thursday night, they'll do here and then there'll be a practice production. There'll be practices or rehearsals. Some shows start on Thursday, but most of them are rehearsal and stuff. So that same person will do this meeting here at 2 and then the rehearsal at 7. They've got a time. So it's not that you can't do it. It may be something we do on overtime. It may be something we do there. But I would just want that change to be because there would be 2 or 3 people that this meeting time has become, we can make an accommodation and adjust it and affect somebody's schedule and timing. In the worst case, you'd have to pay overtime. But it's hard to pay people overtime who really, and this is the lull time. These 3 months are okay. It's when productions come up in October when your plays come back. Like I say, we're at lull time now because there's no performances. So if it was a big issue board-wise on a time, then I would make the accommodation. If it's not, and it doesn't seem to be, that's where I'd recommend against to make those changes to do a different time because of what it caused. But it's up to the board.
Help me. 2 o'clock versus 9 o'clock. We're saying this,
I
don't
think
know how I
IT's
missed
day
this
starts
memo.
later than that. Like, I think they work more like noon to 9 than.
Because all the meetings and
So there,
rehearsals.
If anything coming out on 2 o'clock.
This just happens to be my
Leave it
area,
to-
but, okay, so when we say they do this or they do that, what are they doing right now for our meeting?
They're filming it. They're
filming.
They're making sure it's on live so people can watch you and watch what you're doing, and then they can convert that to our library. Then they immediately convert that, whatever that process is, to the library where you can watch it tomorrow, watch it the next day, and in perpetuity, hopefully, as long as we keep all the meetings to do.
So really, they're not really doing anything right now. They may convert it or click it and copy. And
Well, they're here. They got to be here to run it and film it and make sure everything's going right. There's no automatic click on where the camera clicks on and you go in and it clicks off and you do. So
this IT person right now is doing a lot?
yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
and hopefully as a result you're live, so somebody can be watching what we're doing right now. The people want to watch.
Hopefully it's an IT person.
What I'd like to do, because this information is, to table this to our next meeting. We'll have more clarification of that, plus hopefully a full. In other words, I don't want to change the time. Let's pretend we didn't have this IT issue. I don't want to, I'd like the full
Was
input.
it his call?
And Cassie's
I don't know if it's on
not
call.
here, so I'd just like to table this discussion to the next meeting.
Fine.
Michelle,
Which will
okay?
be at 2 o'clock.
Yes.
Cassie did share last week that she'd have a hard time getting here in the morning. So she would have the opposite problem that you're having. So,
But, like, if we're going to, at the end of the day, we'd have a discussion.
Right.
And take a vote. I just want everybody to be present because to take a vote. That's what I'm saying. And I hate to table it, because I think tabling's, like,
Is it ultimately our decision, or are you making the call as the city manager?
well, if
Well, you
if
would make a
hear some
decision.
problems,
If there's problems with it, I could ask the board of commissioners to do something with it. But, I want to resolve it. Again, all due respect, these meetings, when you fill out for the board, the time is on there, what the meetings are. I've got a lot of evening meetings that I can't fill or put on the board because I can't get people to do it on the board. So in my frame of mind, the proper thing to do is if you can't make the time to go to one of those night boards, which I'm desperately needing people on, very important boards of the city's planning and zoning and stuff, instead of changing a whole meeting that's been set otherwise, there's plenty of spots. In fact, there's 2 boards we can't put on the agenda for Tuesday because we have 0 applicants for. The other 2 we're putting on are 1 applicant. We've got 1 applicant for boards we've been waiting on to put on for Tuesday night.
What boards are they?
So,
Right now, Board of Adjustment and Heritage Preservation. They both meet at 6:30.
but tonight, Tuesdays, thank goodness we got one. We've not been able to fill the planning and zoning and code enforcement. We finally got somebody. We've delayed that board meeting for a month. We're just not, and we put out blitzes, we put out requests. Hopefully, we'll get some from the Citizens Academy. We're gonna get some out of there. Hopefully, they come to these boards. But Board of Adjustment, planning, those are very important boards that we can't get people in the evenings, that we can't get people to the boards, so.
So I'd like to table it to the next meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll be at 2:00. So review, item number 4, review and discussion other budget issues. I mean, we've been.
Ron's not here, and I think we covered a whole bunch of
I
them.
think we covered a whole bunch. Let me throw it out to questions that we have. I think this
All my
meeting-
I
questions.
think we asked
Anybody's
them.
who really wants to come to a fun meeting, this
Well,
should be a fun
I
meeting
just,
today.
just by way of observation based on the discussion, I think it's obvious that budgeting is not exact science. You gotta make value judgments.
Yep,
And they're gonna have a lot of value judgments to make in their meeting.
they've squeezed it, it's like a funnel. First meeting, it was like herding cats. Second meeting, they narrowed it down. Now the challenge will be tonight.
But again, the challenges, I mean, you know, because you've done these budgets before, there's a lot of things, but nothing matches this year when you got all the different dynamics of the extra money, and you got the tax revenue increase, you got the big change, and all of a sudden these cities doing out, I mean, when you heard people doing 9% and stuff raised, I mean, you got all these dynamics going on. You got a bunch of I mean, this poor board that, you know, 3 of them are brand new, this is, this is one experienced board that had been in office in their second term, leaving, would have trouble struggling with all the different decisions and dynamics for the circumstances you've seen this year in this budget. That's why when this thing ends, I don't know where I'm collapsing, September 23rd when the final thing is, but I have a collapse on because this has been on staff and everything, trying to put all these together, trying to put these charts and do it so you can absorb everything you've got. I mean, you see how hard it is to absorb everything. The poor board, and they got some big decisions that they're thrown into. So again, they've weeded through them in 2 meetings and stuff, and to come tonight and they're out of time. So I just got to give it to them because they really they really have it. A lot
Progress
more than the
has
other
been
boards.
made. It's just, I don't know how close you'll come tonight to squeeze it down. But I think I'm gonna come. I better have the sock in the mouth. Especially if they start talking about changing the tax rate or some of the other items. Just don't. Any other questions or comments or? Okay, let's just see, make sure we haven't skipped anything on the next meeting.
September 15th.
That's good, that's only a month away.
And you'd already have one of the public hearings for the budget out of the way, so you'd have a little bit of gauge if there's any,
When are the
Public.
public meetings for the budget, do you recall?
yeah.
I don't have it.
Tuesday, September 6th? What's the first? The first Tuesday,
First Tuesday.
and then the third Wednesday isn't it?
It's the 6th and 21st.
Wednesday? Yeah.
Okay.
It was scheduled for Tuesday and Tuesday, but you can't set your meeting the same time as the county meeting in the county. So we had to move it from Tuesday to Wednesday for the second one, because the law says you can't do it at the same time there's a county meeting. So that's why it's a Tuesday and a Wednesday.
Okay, we'll be at the next meeting. Future agenda items, we'll still be talking about the budget, but between tonight's meeting and that first budget, public budget meeting, we've made our recommendation again. The board. we all know
Decides,
this,
yeah.
decides.
I got that.
We made a recommendation
All we can do.
based on our best,
Right.
as if we're running the business. And that's it. Okay, so is there any other future agenda items? And we can always think of something before now in the next meeting.
Well, I think since you'll have feedback from the first public meeting at the next meeting, we'll have plenty to talk about.
Great, okay. And Ron will probably do a song and dance on year-to-date results.
Not yet. He'll need time to compile those, so.
With that said, there's no public comments, no public on. Going to call for adjournment.